But 3,000 colonists reached the evacuation shuttles and launched into space. On the bridge of the Tempest, Captain Jiwan, wiped to the UES Tempest, was dying. Veltharis did not need to be an engineer to understand that. The ship groaned and shuddered with every movement, its hull breached in 20 places, its engines running on what Do Hyun called hope and spite. They had saved the colonists from Mirian. All 3,000 civilians were aboard rescue vessels heading back to human space. But the price had been terrible. 7 pilots gone, 40 crew members dead, half the ship's systems offline. And they were still 2 days from the nearest repair station. Captain Jiwan sat in her command chair, her face pale but her voice steady. "Damage report. Weapons at 30%, Minho said. Shields are down completely. Engines are holding at 40% capacity. But Do Hyun says we're leaking coolant faster than we can replace it. How long until we reach the repair station?" 48 hours at current speed. Veltharis watched the crew work. They were exhausted. Some had visible injuries. All of them had lost friends. Yet they continued their duties with mechanical efficiency, as if running on instinct alone. Hana looked up from her communications console. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's Vryn. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly ahead." The bridge fell silent. Through the view screen, Veltharis saw them emerge from the distortion of faster-than-light exit. 12 Vryn warships, massive and predatory, their organic hulls gleaming in the starlight. "They followed us," Minho said quietly. "This is a revenge fleet. They want payback for the ships we destroyed." Captain Jiwan stared at the tactical display. The Vryn fleet was fresh, undamaged, fully armed. The Tempest was a wreck held together by emergency patches and determination. There was no possible way to win this fight. There was barely a way to survive it. "Options," Jiwan said. "We can't outrun them," Minho reported. "Not with damaged engines. We can't fight them. We don't have the weapons or shields. We could try to surrender." Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. Several humans actually laughed, bitter and tired. "You know we don't do that," Jiwan said softly. "I know," Minho agreed, "but I had to say it. For the record," Veltharis stood up from his station. "Captain Jiwan, this is insanity. Your ship is destroyed. Your crew is exhausted. You have no hope of victory. You must surrender. It is the only logical choice." She turned to look at him, and in her eyes, Veltharis saw something that terrified him. Not fear, not desperation. "Something worse, acceptance, observer," she said gently. "Humans don't surrender. We never learned how. The word isn't in our vocabulary when it comes to protecting what matters." "Then you will die," Veltharis said. "Yes," Captain Jiwan agreed. "We probably will. But we'll take as many of them with us as we can. And we'll buy time for those evacuation shuttles to get away. 2 days head start should be enough for them to reach safety." She stood up, addressing her crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Vryn Revenge Fleet has found us. We're not going to make it to the repair station, but we are going to make sure those colonists we saved stay saved. We're going to give them time to escape. That means we hold this position. We fight until we can't fight anymore. And when we can't fight anymore, we fight anyway." The crew responded not with fear, but with grim determination. Veltharis watched them prepare their dying ship for a final battle. They moved with purpose, even with despair. It was the most horrible and beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Do Hyun," Jiwan said, "how much power can you give me?" The engineer's voice came through, rough with exhaustion. "For how long, Captain?" "Long enough, then everything. I can give you everything. It'll probably blow up the ship in the process, but if we're going down anyway, we might as well go down bright." Veltharis accessed the engineering displays without permission. What he saw made his crystalline structure grow cold. Do Hyun was not just overriding safety limits. He was preparing to deliberately overload the reactor. The ship would not just be destroyed. It would explode with the force of a small star. "You are planning to turn your ship into a weapon," Veltharis said. "That's right," Captain Jiwan confirmed. "We load every bit of explosives we have left into the cargo bays. We rig the reactor to overload. We charge straight at the Vryn fleet, and when we get close enough, we detonate everything at once. With any luck, we'll take half their fleet with us." "That is murder," Veltharis said. "That is suicide." "That's war," Lieutenant Minho corrected. "Human war. We fight with everything we have. And when we run out of weapons, we become the weapon." The Vryn fleet was accelerating toward them, eager for vengeance. Beltharis could see their weapon ports glowing, charging for the killing strike. 12 ships against 1 wreck. It was not even a fair fight. Hana spoke up from communications. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. Human frequencies. Multiple ships dropping out of faster than light." The tactical display updated. 3 human warships materialized from faster than light travel, positioning themselves between the Tempest and the Vryn fleet. They were fresh ships, undamaged, their weapons hot and ready. A face appeared on the view screen. A human male with hard eyes and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. "This is Commander Hyunseo of the UES Defiant. Captain Jiwon, you look like you could use some help." Beltharis saw something he had never seen before. Captain Jiwon's eyes filling with tears of relief. "Commander, you're 2 days early. We got word about Mirian," Hyunseo said. "Figured you might have pissed off the Vryn again." "Looks like we figured right. What's your status?" "We're combat ineffective. Shields down, weapons minimal, crew exhausted. We were preparing for a final stand." "Final stand," Commander Hyunseo repeated. He smiled, and it was a terrible smile. "That's what I like about you. Jiwon, you were going to ram 12 Vryn warships in a burning wreck and hope for the best." "It was the plan we had," she said simply. "Well, now you've got a better plan. Take your ship and your crew and limp to that repair station. We'll handle the Vryn." "Commander, there are 12 of them. And there are 3 of us," Hyunseo interrupted. "Plus, you've already shown them what happens when they mess with humans." "They're scared, Jiwon. They should be. Now get out of here." "That's an order." The Tempest began moving away from the Vryn fleet, its damaged engines straining. Behind them, the 3 fresh human warships accelerated forward. Not to defensive positions, not to establish a perimeter. They charged directly at the Vryn, just like the Tempest had done weeks ago. Beltharis watched the battle unfold through the long-range sensors. It was the same terrifying display he had witnessed before, humans flying into the teeth of enemy fire, taking damage that should have crippled them and fighting anyway. Using tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. One human ship took catastrophic damage, its hull breached in multiple places, fires visible through the tears in its armor. It did not retreat. Instead, it rammed a Vryn heavy cruiser at full speed, both ships exploding in a bloom of fire. The Vryn fleet broke. After losing 5 ships to human fury, they turned and fled back into faster-than-light travel. Commander Hyunseo's 2 remaining vessels did not pursue. They held position, guarding the Tempest's retreat. "They saved us," Captain Jiwon said softly. "No," Minho corrected. "They avenged us. We were already committed to dying. They just made sure we didn't have to." Beltharis understood the difference now. It was not that humans did not fear death, they did. He could see it in their faces, in the trembling of their hands when they thought no one was watching. They feared death as much as any species. They simply refused to let that fear stop them. 2 days later, the Tempest docked with the repair station. The crew transferred to temporary quarters while engineers began the long process of rebuilding their ship. Beltharis watched them scatter to different areas, some to medical facilities for treatment, others to communication centers to contact their families, still others to the station's memorial hall to add names to the growing list of human dead. He found Captain Jiwon standing alone in an observation lounge, staring out at the stars. She looked small and tired, the weight of command and loss visible in every line of her body. "Captain," Beltharis said quietly, "I do not understand your species. You lost 17 crew members in the Vryn battle, 7 more at Mirian, dozens wounded. Your ship is destroyed, yet you consider this a success." "It's not about success," Jiwon said. "It's about duty, about doing what's right even when it costs everything, about refusing to let evil win just because fighting it is hard. That is not rational." "No," she agreed, "it's not. But it's human, and maybe that's what makes us different. We're not fighting because we've calculated the odds and think we can win. We're fighting because someone has to. Because the alternative is to let innocent people die, and we can't live with that." She turned to face him fully. "Observer, you wanted to know if humans can fight. Now you know. We can fight. We can fight better than any species in the galaxy. Not because we're stronger or smarter or more advanced. We fight better because we refuse to stop. We refuse to give up. We refuse to accept that some things are impossible. That is what terrifies me," Beltharis admitted. "Your species does not know when to quit. You fight battles you cannot win. You make sacrifices. The UES Tempest limped through space, trailing atmosphere and coolant from a dozen hull breaches. Veltharis watched the repair crews work from the observation deck, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans held a memorial service for Taeyang's team 2 days after the battle. They gathered in the main cargo bay, which had been cleared and decorated with images of the fallen Marines. Captain Ji-won spoke about each person by name, telling stories about their lives, their families, their dreams. Humans cried openly, holding each other. Then the service ended and they went back to work. That was what Veltharis could not comprehend. They mourned deeply, genuinely, with an intensity that seemed like it should break them, and then they simply continued. They repaired weapons. They ran combat drills. They prepared to fight again. "How do you do this?" he asked Hana one evening in the mess hall. "How do you lose friends and then immediately ready yourself to lose more?" She stared into her coffee for a long moment. "Because if we don't, their deaths mean nothing. Taeyang died buying time for those colonists. If we fall apart now, if we stop being ready, then the next time someone needs help we won't be there, and then he died for nothing." "That is not logical," Veltharis said. "Your emotional pain reduces your combat efficiency." "Maybe," Hana said. "Or maybe it makes us fight harder. Maybe knowing what loss feels like makes us more determined to prevent others from feeling it. You ever think about that, observer?" He had not. The Cavalian approach to military service was to suppress emotion entirely during operations. It was cleaner that way, simpler. But as he watched these humans, Veltharis was beginning to suspect that clean and simple was not the same as effective. 3 weeks after the Vryn battle, the Tempest received a distress call. The Mirian colonies, a cluster of mining outposts on the edge of human space, were under attack. The Crethean Dominion, a militaristic empire known for its brutality, had decided to claim the resource-rich asteroids for themselves. Veltharis stood on the bridge as Captain Ji-won reviewed the tactical data. 15 Crethean warships, Minho reported. They've already destroyed 2 of the 3 colony stations. 3,000 civilians are trapped on the remaining station. Crethean ground forces are preparing to board. The numbers appeared on the displays. The Crethean did not take prisoners. They would kill every colonist down to the children. "Fleet response time?" Ji-won asked. 6 hours minimum, Hana said quietly. 6 hours. The colonists did not have 6 hours. Veltharis knew what would happen next. It was the only logical choice. The Tempest would report the attack, maintain position until support arrived, then assist in whatever rescue operations were possible. "All hands," Captain Ji-won's voice rang through the ship. "This is the captain. We've received a distress call from Mirian colonies. 15 enemy warships are attacking 3,000 civilians. Fleet support is 6 hours away. We're going in alone. Battle stations." Veltharis felt something in his crystalline structure that might have been fear. "Captain, this is madness. You cannot engage 15 warships with 1 damaged vessel. You will be destroyed." Ji-won turned to face him fully. "You're right. We probably will be destroyed, but we're going anyway. You want to know why, observer? Because those are our people down there. Because someone has to try. Because the alternative is abandoning 3,000 humans to death and slavery. And we don't do that. We don't ever do that." "I must object officially," Veltharis said. "This violates every principle of tactical doctrine." "Noted," Ji-won said. "Then softer. No one will blame you if you want to transfer to an escape pod. We'll pass close enough to a commercial route that you'd be picked up." For a moment, Veltharis considered it. This was not his fight. These were not his people. He was an observer, nothing more. But something made him return to his station and activate his recording equipment. "I will stay," he said. "The council must see this." The journey to Mirian took 3 hours at maximum speed. Do-hyun pushed the damaged engines beyond their rated capacity, keeping them running through what he cheerfully called aggressive maintenance and a lot of prayer. The crew spent those hours preparing. Veltharis watched Unji, the explosive ordnance specialist working in the armory. She was modifying mining charges from the cargo hold, turning civilian equipment into military weapons. "These aren't designed for combat," Veltharis observed. "Nope," Unji agreed, her hands working with practiced precision. "They're designed to crack asteroids. But a Crethean warship is basically just a big rock with engines, so the principle's the same, more or less, probably." "You are not certain this will work?" She grinned at him, a very human expression that showed teeth. "Observer, nothing we do is certain. We just make it up as we go and hope physics cooperates. That's the human way. In the medical bay, Suyon was preparing for casualties. Veltharis had reviewed the medical supplies. They were not sufficient for the level of damage the crew was likely to sustain. You do not have enough medical equipment, he told her. I know, she said calmly, organizing surgical tools. I'll have to make choices. Who to save, who to make comfortable. It's the part of my job I hate most. How do you live with that? I don't know, she admitted. I just do it anyway. Because someone has to. The Tempest dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Mirian system. The tactical displays immediately painted 15 Krethian warships in red. They were larger than the Tempest, better armed and undamaged. And between them and the last colony station there was nothing but empty space. They've seen us, Minho reported. 3 ships breaking off to intercept. The rest are continuing their attack on the station. Good, Jiwan said. That's 3 less shooting at civilians. All weapons free. Do-hyun, I need everything you can give me. You've got it, Captain. Though I should mention that engineering is currently on fire. A small fire. Very controlled. Barely noticeable, really. Put it out when you can. The first Krethian ship opened fire. The Tempest rolled sideways, evading most of the barrage, but several hits connected. Alarms shrieked. Veltharis tasted something acrid in the air, his species equivalent of fear. But the humans were not afraid. Or if they were, they channeled it into action. Return fire lanced out from the Tempest's weapons. One Krethian ship took damage to its engines and began to fall behind. Yunji, now would be a good time for your surprises, Jiwon said. On it, Captain. Launching packages 1 through 6. Small objects ejected from the Tempest's cargo bay, drifting in the vacuum like harmless debris. The Krethian ships ignored them, focusing their fire on the Tempest itself. They did not realize their mistake until the objects reached proximity range and detonated. Yunji's modified mining charges were not subtle. They were not elegant, but they were powerful. The explosions ripped into 2 Krethian vessels, crippling their shields and tearing open their hulls. That's for Taiyang, Yunji said softly over the communications channel. But there were still 12 Krethian ships, and the Tempest was already damaged. Energy beams hammered into their shields. Hull plating burned away. Fires broke out on multiple decks, Captain, Minho said, his voice tight. The station just broadcast a message. Krethian ground forces have breached the hull. They're fighting inside the colony. On the tactical display, Veltharis could see the nightmare unfolding. The colony station was not a military installation. It was a mining facility with civilian workers, families, children, and Krethian warriors were cutting through them. We can't reach them in time, Minho continued. Not fighting through all these ships. Silence on the bridge. The kind of silence that came before terrible decisions. Then Private Sang-hoon spoke over the communication system. He was in the fighter bay. Captain, I have an idea. It's a really stupid idea, but it might work. Tell me, Jiwan said. We load every fighter we have left with those mining charges. We fly straight at the station, ignoring the warships. We crash through the station's compromised hull, detonate the charges inside the Krethian ground forces position, clear the way for the civilians to evacuate. That's a suicide run, Lieutenant Minho said flatly. Yes, sir, but it'll work. The Krethian won't expect it, and it'll buy the colonists time to reach the evacuation shuttles. Veltharis listened in horror. He is volunteering to die, he said. This young human is calmly proposing his own death. That's what humans do, Captain G1 said quietly. Then louder. Sang-hoon, you're cleared for the operation. Anyone who wants to volunteer, step forward. But no one is ordered. This is strictly voluntary. 9 pilots volunteered, 9 humans who looked at certain death and raised their hands. They launched 15 minutes later. Veltharis watched through the external cameras as the small fighter craft accelerated toward the colony station. Mining charges strapped to their hulls. Krethian warships fired at them. 2 fighters exploded immediately. The rest kept going. Sang-hoon's voice came through the communications channel, clear and steady. For Taeyang, for Earth, for everyone who can't fight for themselves. They hit the station at full speed, crashing through the breached hull and into the corridors where Krethian warriors were hunting colonists. The mining charges detonated in sequence, tearing through metal and flesh, creating walls of fire and destruction. 7 human pilots died. The first Vryn scout exploded in a ball of fire and debris. The Tempest flew through the expanding cloud of wreckage, weapons blazing from every port. Veltharis clung to his station as the ship rolled and dove, the artificial gravity struggling to compensate. 2 more scouts down, Minho called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. Heavy raiders moving to flank. They're trying to surround us. Let them try, Captain Jiwon said. Doyun, transfer power from life support to forward shields. We only need to breathe if we survive. Through the view screen, Veltharis watched 3 Vryn heavy raiders approaching from different angles. Each one was larger than the Tempest. Their weapons charged with sickly green light. This was it, he thought. This was where the humans would finally do the logical thing and retreat. Marine teams, prepare for boarding action, Jiwon ordered instead. Veltharis turned to stare at her. Boarding action? You want to board their ships? That's where their reactors are, Jiwon said calmly. Can't blow them up from out here, so we'll blow them up from inside. Sergeant Taeyang, you ready? A voice came through the communication system, rough and eager. Born ready, Captain. My team's got the charges. Just get us close enough. You're insane, Veltharis whispered. Boarding a Vryn vessel while it's firing at you is suicide. No species attempts this. Minho glanced at him with a grim smile. Good thing we're not like other species then. The ship shook violently as a Vryn energy blast punched through their shields and scorched the hull. Damage alarms screamed. Veltharis could smell something burning, acrid and chemical. Hull breach on deck 4, someone reported. Sealing bulkheads. Fire control teams responding, another voice added, but no one panicked. The humans simply did their jobs, calling out problems and solutions in practiced rhythms. It was like watching a machine function. Except machines did not bleed when console stations exploded. Machines did not keep working with burns on their hands. A young female pilot named Jisoo appeared on the communications screen, her fighter craft visible through the external cameras. Captain requesting permission to go after those raiders. Granted. Show them what Earth's best can do. Veltharis watched in disbelief as a dozen small fighter craft launched from the Tempest's bay. They flew directly at the Vryn ships, impossibly small against the massive raiders. The Vryn point defense systems opened fire, filling space with deadly energy beams. 2 human fighters exploded immediately. Just gone, erased from existence in flashes of light. But the others kept going, weaving and dodging with suicidal precision. They flew so close to the Vryn hulls that their shields scraped against enemy armor. What are they doing? Veltharis asked. They're going to crash. They're creating blind spots, Minho explained, his fingers never stopping their work on tactical controls. Get close enough and the big guns can't track you. Human pilots figured that out about 300 years ago in atmospheric combat. Works in space too. One fighter, Jisoo's craft, attached itself to a Vryn raider's hull with magnetic clamps. Through the camera feed, Veltharis could see her setting up some kind of device. Breaching charge placed, Jisoo reported. Getting clear. 30 seconds. She detached and accelerated away just as Vryn weapon systems finally targeted her position. Energy blasts chased her through space, missing by meters, then centimeters. One clipped her wing, sending her craft spinning. But she recovered and kept flying. Detonation in 5, 4, 3. The breaching charge exploded, tearing a hole in the Vryn raider's armor. Air and debris vented into space, and through that hole flew Sergeant Taeyang and his marine team, using personal thrusters to cross the gap between ships. Veltharis accessed the camera feeds from the marine's armor. What he saw would haunt him forever. The interior of a Vryn ship was a nightmare of organic technology and chitinous passages. The Vryn themselves were worse. Massive insectoid creatures with mandibles that could tear through metal, claws that dripped with venom, eyes that reflected no mercy. Taeyang's team hit them like a hammer. The humans fired their weapons with brutal efficiency, advancing through corridors that were designed for creatures twice their size. When a Vryn warrior lunged at Taeyang, he dodged sideways and shot it point blank in what passed for its head. When another Marine ran out of ammunition, she pulled a knife and kept fighting. A knife. Against armored alien insects the size of ground vehicles, and she was winning. Reactor room located, Taeyang reported, his breathing heavy but controlled. Setting charges now. Team form a perimeter. They're going to try to stop us. They did try. A swarm of Vryn warriors poured into the corridor, clicking and screeching their rage. The Marines fell back to the reactor room entrance, firing constantly. One human went down, her armor torn open by Vryn claws. The Marine next to her grabbed her body and pulled her behind cover, never stopping his return fire. Charges set, Taeyang said. 10 minutes until detonation. Let's get out of here. Negative. Captain Jiwan's voice cut through the chaos. The other two raiders are targeting our evacuation point. You won't make it back. Silence on the Marine Channel. Then Taiyang actually laughed. Well, that's unfortunate. Guess we're staying then. Make it count, Captain. What is he saying? Veltharis demanded. He's going to stay on the ship while it explodes? He's buying us time, Jiwan said quietly. And making sure those charges don't get disarmed. That's what Marines do. Through the camera feeds, Veltharis watched Taiyang's team dig in. They built barricades from Vrin equipment. They positioned themselves to create overlapping fields of fire. They prepared to die fighting, and not one of them complained. One of them, a young male named Sanghun, was singing softly. A human war song about holding the line and never surrendering. The others joined in, their voices rough but unified. Captain, Doyun's voice came through, strained. I can get those shields back up, but I need 5 minutes and I need power from weapons. Do it, Jiwan ordered. All batteries cease fire. Transfer to shields. The Tempest went dark, all its weapons powering down. The two remaining Vrin raiders immediately accelerated toward them. Sensing weakness, their weapons glowed brighter, charging for killing shots. They're going to destroy us, Veltharis said. His voice sounded distant to his own auditory sensors. Not if Taiyang's charges blow first, Minho said. Come on, come on. The Vrin raiders opened fire. Energy beams hammered into the Tempest's shields, which flickered and failed in sections. Alarms screamed. The bridge filled with smoke. A console exploded and the human operating it collapsed. Medical teams rushed to help. Through it all, Captain Jiwan stood steady, watching her displays. 30 seconds, she said. Shields holding at 40%. 20 seconds. The view screen showed the Vrin raider with Taiyang's team aboard. It was still firing, still trying to kill them. And inside, those Marines were still fighting, still holding the reactor room, still refusing to let the Vrin disarm the charges. 10 seconds, Jiwan counted. Veltharis could hear the Marines singing over the communications channel. They knew they were about to die. They were singing anyway. 5 seconds. It's been an honor, Captain, Taiyang said. His voice was calm, accepting. Tell my brother I'm sorry I won't make it to his wedding. I will, Jiwan promised. And Veltharis saw tears on her face even though her voice never wavered. The Vrin raider exploded. The blast was massive, a miniature star blooming in space. The shockwave hit the Tempest and sent them tumbling. The other two raiders tried to evade, but they were too close. The explosion tore into them, crippling one and destroying the other. When the sensors cleared, 7 Vrin ships were debris. 2 Vrin ships were fleeing. And the UES Tempest was still there, battered and burning but alive. The bridge was silent except for the alarms and the crackling of damaged equipment. Then Hana spoke softly. They're gone. Taiyang's team. All of them. Captain Jiwan closed her eyes for just a moment. Then she opened them and began giving orders. Damage control teams to all sections. Medical to the bridge. Hana, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we've engaged and repelled the Vrin. Tell them we've bought the colony's time. Tell them... Her voice broke. Just for a second. Then she steadied herself. Tell them 10 good people died to save 3,000 civilians. Tell them it was worth it. Veltharis looked around the bridge at these humans. They were wounded, exhausted, grieving, and they were already preparing for the next fight. Their ship was damaged. Their friends were dead. But they had won, no, Veltharis realized. They had not won. Winning implied a calculation of acceptable losses. Humans did not calculate losses. They simply refused to lose, even when losing meant dying. He began typing his report to the council with appendages that would not stop shaking. Previous assessment incorrect. Humans are not unsuitable for military alliance. They are terrifying. 3 weeks passed aboard the UES Tempest, and Veltharis filled his reports with observations that confirmed his initial assessment. Humans were inefficient creatures who wasted time on things that had nothing to do with military readiness. Every morning, the crew gathered in the mess hall for something they called breakfast. They did not simply consume their nutritional requirements and return to duty. Instead, they sat together, talked, laughed, and shared stories. Veltharis timed it once. The average human spent 47 minutes on a meal that could be consumed in 8. Why do you waste so much time eating together? He asked Hana one morning. She looked up from her coffee, a bitter human drink that Veltharis found incomprehensible. It's not about the food, observer. It's about the people. We need to know each other, trust each other, You can't fight alongside someone you don't know. This made no logical sense. The Kavalian military trained individuals to function as perfect units regardless of personal connection. Emotion was a weakness in combat, not a strength. Yet the humans seemed to believe otherwise. He watched their training exercises with growing confusion. In the combat simulator, teams of humans practiced boarding actions and close-quarters fighting. They used real weapons with reduced power, and they actually hit each other. Veltharis witnessed multiple injuries, bruises, and cuts that required medical attention. "This is barbaric," he told Lieutenant Minho after one particularly brutal session. "Your people are damaging each other in training." Minho wiped blood from his lip where another Marine had struck him. "If we don't train hard, we die easy. Better a bruise in practice than a grave in battle." "But the injury rate reduces your combat readiness," Veltharis argued. "Does it?" Minho smiled. "Or does it make us tougher? Does it teach us to keep fighting even when we're hurt? You think about that, observer." Veltharis did think about it. He thought about it a great deal. The more he observed, the less he understood. These humans seemed to deliberately make things harder for themselves. They trained until exhausted, then trained more. They practiced scenarios where victory seemed impossible, then found ways to win anyway. They bonded with each other in ways that seemed designed to cause emotional pain when those bonds inevitably broke. One afternoon, he found himself in engineering with Do Yun. The engineer was singing while he worked, an old human song about fire and defiance. The engineering deck was spotless, every tool in its place, every system running at peak efficiency. Yet Do Hyun had decorated his workspace with images of his family and small objects that served no functional purpose. "Why do you keep these things here?" Veltharis asked, pointing at a small carved wooden figure. "My daughter made that," Do Hyun said, his voice softening. "She's 7. Reminds me what I'm fighting for out here." "You fight for the defense network, for your species, for the alliance," Veltharis said. "These abstract concepts should be sufficient motivation." Do Hyun turned to look at him fully. "Abstract concepts don't keep you going when your ship is burning and your friends are dying. Love does, memory does, the face of your kid does. That's what makes us dangerous, observer. We don't fight for concepts. We fight for people." Before Veltharis could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the ship. The calm atmosphere vanished instantly. Humans ran to their stations with practiced speed. Veltharis hurried to the bridge where Captain Jiwan was already studying tactical displays. "Report," she said, her voice now hard and commanding. "Multiple contacts dropping out of faster than light," Minho announced. "Vrin signatures. 6 light scouts, 3 heavy raiders. They're moving to intercept." Veltharis felt his crystalline structure grow cold. The Vrin. He had reviewed the records. Every species in the galaxy feared them. They were death itself, swarming and merciless. "Battle stations," Jiwan ordered. "Get me firing solutions on those scouts. Hana, broadcast emergency beacon. Dohyun, I need maximum power to weapons and shields." The crew moved with sudden precision. The casual, friendly humans Veltharis had observed were gone. In their place were warriors with hard eyes and steady hands. "Captain," Veltharis said carefully, "standard galactic defense protocol requires you to retreat and call for fleet support. Your single ship cannot engage 9 Vrin vessels." Jiwan turned to look at him. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. "Observer, we're 30 light years from the nearest support fleet. By the time they arrive, the Vrin will have finished with us and moved on to attack the mining colonies in the next system. 3,000 civilians live there. We're all that stands between them and death." "But you cannot win this battle," Veltharis insisted. "The logical choice is to retreat and save your ship." "Logic," Jiwan said softly, "is not always the right choice." She turned back to her crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Vrin raiders are inbound. We're going to stop them here. I won't lie to you. This is going to hurt. But we're going to make them pay for every meter of space, for every second of time we buy those colonists. Show them what humans do when someone threatens innocent people. Show them why Earth doesn't back down." Through the view screen, Veltharis saw the Vrin ships approaching. They looked like insects, all sharp angles and organic curves, chitin armor and weapon ports. They moved in perfect coordination, a swarm with one mind. "Weapons hot," Minho reported. "Shields at maximum. Enemy in range in 30 seconds. Veltharis activated his recording equipment with shaking appendages. He had to document this. The council needed to know. They needed to see what he was seeing. The medical bay chimed in over communications. "Suyan here." Medical teams ready. We've prepared for mass casualties. Mass casualties. The words hung in the air. These humans knew they were about to be torn apart, and yet no one was suggesting retreat. No one was questioning the orders. They were going to fight and probably die for people they had never met. Observer, Captain Jiwon said, not looking away from her screens. You wanted to see humans in combat. You're about to get your wish. I suggest you hold on to something. The Vrin ships opened fire. The Tempest shuddered as energy weapons impacted their shields. Lights flickered. Console screens flashed red with damage reports. But Captain Jiwon did not flinch. Return fire. All batteries. Minho, get me an attack pattern. We're going straight down their throats. Captain, that's suicide, Veltharis heard himself say. Several humans on the bridge laughed. Not nervous laughter, not frightened laughter. They laughed like someone had told a joke they had heard before. Suicide is our specialty, Minho said, his fingers flying across tactical controls. Let me show you how humans fight. The ship accelerated forward directly toward the Vrin swarm. Every tactical manual Veltharis had ever studied screamed that this was wrong. You did not charge at superior numbers. You did not deliberately close distance with an enemy known for overwhelming firepower. But as he watched the human crew work in perfect synchronization, their casual friendliness transformed into lethal efficiency. Veltharis began to understand something terrible. These humans were not ignoring tactical doctrine out of ignorance. They were ignoring it on purpose. They had their own way of fighting, their own rules, and those rules were written in blood and stubbornness and a refusal to accept the word impossible. Impact in 10 seconds, Minho announced. All hands, brace for combat. Veltharis gripped his station and watched in horror as the UES Tempest flew directly into the Vrin swarm. The real battle was about to begin. Veltharis stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his crystalline body reflecting the soft blue lights from above. Around him sat representatives from 40 different species, each one more ancient and wise than the last. Today they would decide on the human question, and Veltharis had been chosen to find the answer. The council leader, an ancient being whose species had mastered space travel when most worlds were still forming, spoke in the universal language. Observer Veltharis, you understand your mission. The humans have applied to join our defense network. They are young, impulsive, and emotional. We need to know if they can truly fight. Veltharis bowed his head respectfully. In his 300 years of life, he had observed dozens of species. The Kavalians, his own people, were known across the galaxy as the perfect diplomats. They never fought, never raised their voices, never let emotion cloud their judgment. War was a science to the older species, calculated and precise. Surely these humans, barely off their own planet, would be no different. I will document everything, Veltharis promised. 3 months should be sufficient. The other council members made sounds of agreement. 3 months was generous. Most species could be properly observed in weeks. But humans were strange, they said, unpredictable. It was better to be thorough. 2 days later, Veltharis found himself aboard a transport ship heading toward human space. He reviewed what little information existed about them. They called their planet Earth, a world of water and green lands. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. The transport docked with the human vessel called the UES Tempest. Veltharis gathered his recording equipment and stepped through the airlock. What he saw surprised him immediately. The human ship was not like other military vessels. The walls were not sterile white or cold metal. Instead, there were colors, images, writings in their language. One wall had names written in gold, hundreds of them, and below it said, "Those who gave everything." A memorial, Veltharis realized. How inefficient to waste space on the dead. Observer Veltharis, welcome aboard. He turned to see a human female approaching. She wore a dark blue uniform with marks of rank on her shoulders. Her face was smooth and young by human standards, but her eyes looked much older. I am Captain Jiwon, she said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. We're honored to have you with us. Veltharis carefully touched her hand with his appendage, mimicking the gesture he had studied. Her skin was warm. He had read that humans maintained a constant high body temperature, burning energy at rates that seemed wasteful. Thank you for accepting me, Captain. Let me show you to your quarters, Jiwon said. We've modified them for your atmospheric needs. If anything is uncomfortable, please let us know. As they walked through the corridors, Veltharis observed everything. Human crew members passed by, and each one nodded or smiled at their captain. Some called out greetings. This was wrong, he thought. Military efficiency required hierarchy, distance between ranks. Yet these humans seemed almost friendly with each other. They passed an open area where several humans sat together, laughing at something on a screen. Off-duty crew, Jiwan explained. They were watching entertainment videos. Another inefficiency. The Kavalian military spent off-duty time in meditation and tactical study. Here we are, Jiwan said, opening a door. The quarters were small but functional. A sleeping platform, a desk with human-compatible data interfaces, and a window showing the stars outside. We'll have a briefing in 2 hours. Lieutenant Minho will come get you. After she left, Veltharis began setting up his equipment. He would record everything, analyze it all, and present the council with a complete picture of human military capability. He suspected the report would be short. These humans seemed more interested in comfort and emotion than proper warfare. 2 hours later, a human male arrived at his door. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. Observer Veltharis. I'm Lieutenant Minho, Tactical Officer. Captain wants you in the briefing room. His voice was calm and professional, more like what Veltharis expected from military personnel. The briefing room held a dozen humans around a large table. Captain Jiwan stood at the head, and a holographic display floated above the table showing star charts and patrol routes. Everyone, this is Observer Veltharis from the Galactic Council, Jiwan announced. He'll be with us for the next few months, documenting our operations. Treat him like any other crew member and answer his questions honestly. A female human with short hair raised her hand in a wave. I'm Hana, Communications and Xenolinguistics. If you need help understanding our weird slang, I'm your person. Others introduced themselves. The engineer Do Hyun, who admitted he sometimes fixed things by hitting them with a wrench. The medical officer Suyeon, who smiled but had eyes that had clearly seen terrible things. Various other crew members, each one treating him with casual friendliness. Jiwan began the briefing, discussing their patrol route through the disputed rim. This was territory where several species had conflicting claims, where pirates and raiders operated, where tensions ran high. The perfect place, the council had said, to see humans under pressure. Intel suggests increased activity from Vrin scouts, Minho said, highlighting areas on the map. They've been probing defenses along the trade routes. The Vrin swarm, Veltharis said, recognizing the name. A brutal species insect-like that attacked in overwhelming numbers. You have encountered them before? A few times, Jiwan said quietly. They don't take prisoners and they don't retreat. Every encounter is a fight to the death. Then surely you will avoid them, Veltharis said. Standard protocol is to report sightings and wait for fleet support. Something passed through the room, a shared look between the humans. Several of them smiled, but the smiles were not happy. They were something else, something Veltharis did not yet understand. Observer, Captain Jiwan said gently. Humans don't always follow standard protocol. You'll see that soon enough. The briefing continued with tactical discussions and duty assignments. Veltharis recorded everything, making notes about their procedures. They seemed competent enough, he supposed. Time would tell. That night, alone in his quarters, Veltharis began his first report to the council. Initial observations suggest humans are organized but emotionally driven. They prioritize crew comfort and morale over efficiency. Their approach to potential combat seems casual, almost careless. Further observation required, but preliminary assessment suggests they may not be suitable for military alliance. They do not appear to take warfare seriously enough. He sent the report and dimmed the lights. Outside his window, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, the Vrin swarm hunted. Somewhere out there, he would see what humans were really made of. He had no idea that in 3 weeks he would wish he had never asked that question.